Good evening and welcome to the Meadville Tribune's question and answer forum with the three candidates for Pennsylvania House of Representatives 6th District seat. I'm Keith Gushard, one of the Tribune reporters. With me is Dan Walk, the Tribune's assistant editor. We're going to be asking the candidates a variety of questions, and our candidates tonight, from our left is Pete Zimmer, who's a Democrat running. In the middle is Les Lenhart. He's a write-in candidate, and on the right is Brad Roae. He's a Republican, and he's the current holder of the seat. And we'd also like to welcome you in the audience here tonight at the Vernon Township building, as well as those listening on Cool 101.7 FM and those watching on Armstrong Cable. We thank our media partners for being here this evening. Now, before we begin, we're going to ask one minor housekeeping thing to do. Is if you have a cell phone, please turn it down, like onto mute, or even turn it off. We'd appreciate it very much, just so it doesn't go off during our candidate forum tonight. Now, each of the candidates will have up to 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer the questions that we pose, and we'll alternate with the candidates when we start each question. And then when we get to our closing, each of the candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. At the end of the forum, we drew lots before the start of this evening. Peter was pulled number 1, Les pulled number 2, Brad pulled number 3, so we will start with Mr. Zimmer with his opening statement. Peter?
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and engaging in this open forum here. A year ago, we were about 100 days late in passing our state budget. We got to that point because our elected officials had refused their obligation to pass a timely budget and ultimately ended up costing us, the taxpayer, more money. Around that same time, I was rehabbing my leg after an auto accident. I'd go down to the physical therapy facility. I'd talk to a number of different folks, and a lot of these folks were on working with some sense of the public sector. They could have been grandparents with grandchildren in public schools. They could have been operating in an assisted living facility, or they could have been just trying to redevelop new skills so that they could get a new job and a new career after getting hurt. Whatever the case was, these folks were furious that the government had dropped their obligation. I got into this race to help those folks. I got into this race to help improve the quality of our region. I was tired of having a representative who would sit back and say no, to stand in opposition of all of the things that we wanted to grow in our region. My position is to go on the offensive. It's very easy to sit back and take a defensive role, to cut funding, to stand in the way, to operate in a sense of, let's wait and see what happens. But the best defense is a great offense. So let's take a step forward. Let's stop standing around and stomping our feet. I want to work to raise the wages of Crawford County in Northwest Pennsylvania, to improve property values and to unburden property owners, to cut taxes on small businesses, and to ultimately invest in education and training and for our future. In 2006, from 2016, the average wage in Pennsylvania increased 25%. In Crawford County, it increased less than 20%, less than the rate of inflation. We're working the same amount, but we have less purchasing power. We've got to work together to increase our wages, increase our community, to improve the vibrancy of Pennsylvania. So I ask that I work with you in the future, the employees, the educators, the employers, small businesses, and property owners, to take a step forward, to get on the offensive, and to help rebuild the Commonwealth. On November 8th, vote for me, Peter Zimmer.
Thank you, Peter. Les, you're up. You have up to 3 minutes for your opening statement. Please, I would ask, please, just so we can hear the candidates, I would ask you hold your applause till the very end when we're done. Thank you all very much. Les, you have your opening statement.
I thank the Meadvilles Tribune as well as the Cool 100 and Armstrong Cable for the opportunity to be in here this evening, as well as I appreciate you folks coming out as well to listen. I, Les Lenhart, have taken the last 20 months. I have gone door to door from Fairview to Union Township, outside of Geneva Swamps, all the way to Randolph Township, Wayne Township, and in between, to talk to the people, not just Republican people, Democratic people, as well as independent people. The voters, you. I've come to you, to your homes. I've been to many events to spread that I want to help create a better Crawford County. I want the education of this area to become better. I want to work with the educators and the administration of our schools to bring the Common Core and the No Child Left Behind laws to abolish them, because our children are not learning. I, as an educator, and I've sat on the school board for for Pencrest School District for 4 years, know where the children are lacking in education. And I want to go to Harrisburg. I want to work with those. I want to work with the people that need to be part of the Department of Education to change the educational process of our children to the better. I want to work with all the infrastructure that we have within Crawford County, the railroad system, the water, the interstates. We have it all here, but for the last 20, 30 years, it's depreciating and it's falling apart. And when it's not maintained and when it's not used, that's what happens. We have all the situations of making this area grow, and we need to make it grow. As an individual, as I grew up in this area, I know of the plants that were once here. The free trade agreement and so forth is not helping us either. We are also not friendly with technology and manufacturing as a state. We haven't been for many years. We need to become friendly, and we need to become part of technology, and we need to be part of manufacturing. We need to bring it back to this area. And I, as an individual, want to work on doing those things for you. At the same time, term limits. Term limits are important in factor, but in legislation, they don't want term limits. For some reason, I don't know. I'm making my own concept of running for term limits because I don't think that anybody should be sitting there for their life as a career politician. I myself have told people, as I've traveled between homes and businesses and events, that I want to be there 2 terms. Then my name will not be mentioned. My name will not be mentioned at all.
Mr. Lenhart, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but you are at 3 minutes.
Again, my name is Les Lenhart, and on November 8th, my name will not be seen, but I'm asking for a write-in, where you need to go in, touch the write-in ballot, on the write-in button on the legislative ballot.
Mr. Lenhart, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to catch up.
Thank you.
Mr. Roae, you have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I would like to thank the Meadville Tribune and Armstrong Cable and Cool 101.7 and Vernon Township for making this candidate forum possible. Thank you for everybody that came tonight to watch this. It's great to see so many people here interested in this. And also, welcome to all the people that's listening on the radio or viewing on TV. Over the last 10 years since I've been in the legislature, I have a 100% record voting against tax increases. I view a major part of my job to be to protect my constituents from excessive taxation and reckless government spending. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, and fighting against that type of spending is better than asking all of you to pay higher taxes. I also have a 100% voting record protecting our right to own and bear arms. I have an A rating from the National Rifle Association, and I am the endorsed candidate from the National Rifle Association. A lot of people in our area, most people in our area, care deeply about their constitutional rights, and I'm there to protect them. I also have a 100% voting record for the pro-life issue, and I am endorsed by the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation as well. So over the last 10 years, I've put up votes exactly how I said I would if elected, and if I'm elected for another term, I plan on continuing down the same course. I have A lot of good experience, I think, I bring to the table, in addition to the 10 years of experience actually doing the job. Prior to being in the legislature, I worked for Erie Insurance Group for 14 years. And as most of you know, insurance is a major part of every household budget, every business budget, and we deal with a lot of insurance-related issues in Harrisburg. So I have a lot of good experience to draw from my past work experience. I graduated from Gannon University with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. I completed extensive coursework in accounting, finance, and economics. It's a perfect background for the type of job I have. We deal with a lot of very complex issues, and we have to be able to understand numbers in finance, accounting, things like that. So the background works out very well for me. I've been a volunteer firefighter and EMT with the East Mead Volunteer Fire Department for the last 16 years. Public safety is one of the major things that the state government is responsible for, and I literally have boots on the ground experience when it comes to dealing with emergency services. So when we work on those types of issues, I have a lot that I can bring to the table. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I have 2 sons that are in Boy Scouts right now, and my daughter. They're here tonight, as well as my wife. I've been married for 18 years, almost 19 years. I'll have to check at home. I think it's important that the experience I have raising my kids and being a husband, I bring that experience to the table as well, and I'm looking forward to the forum tonight.
Thank you, Brad. We're going to start off with Peter on our first question. One quick reminder that I did not go over with early on. The candidates do know the yellow card means you've got about 30 seconds to go, and then the red card is kind of like in soccer. We got to stop you from what you're doing. What was mentioned early on was education. That's an interesting topic both locally and across the state. Now, Pennsylvania's education system is paid by a combination of local and state money. Most of the local funds are raised through property taxes, and the state has a formula to try to distribute the wealth among the districts to cover districts that aren't necessarily adequately funded. But there's still a funding crisis going on. We look to the north. Erie is, I believe it was about $5 million out of balance this budget season, and they were talking about closing high schools as a possibility, and that still remains on the table as they get ready to form next year's budget. They'll be working on that after the first of the calendar year. Peter, we're going to start with you. What would you do to address the inequalities in school funding in Pennsylvania? And you have up to 2 minutes to answer.
Yeah, so this is a critical position when we think about moving forward in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is generally recognized as one of the most inequitably funded states in the union. Essentially, our poorer districts are unfairly paying into the system compared to our wealthier districts. If you look at the numbers between our wealthiest districts, poorest districts, the per pupil spending, these are primarily kind of suburbs around Philadelphia, can be upwards of $7,000 more per year. As Keith mentioned, there is a fair funding formula in the works. However, there's a significant caveat that says it is only applied to new funding. So 3% of all funding going to schools is going through this fair funding formula. Ultimately, I agree with the fair funding formula. It takes into account things like English as a second language, poverty rates within the district. I'm trying to think of some other issues, but generally it supports the idea of creating a more fairly funded model. But we need to bring all of the school districts into this. We need to bring all of the funding through this system, rather than just this 3% new funding. Without an equitably funded model, making sure that funding for school districts is as fair as possible, we're diminishing the ability of this great equalizer. This idea that with education, you're able to bring yourself out of poverty. Without that, all we're going to do is continue to stratify our poor districts and our wealthy districts. You live in a poor neighborhood, you go to a poor school. You live in a wealthy neighborhood, you go to a wealthy school. This is fundamentally unfair, borderline unconstitutional in Pennsylvania. School districts are taking the Department of Education to suit for this exact issue. And as a representative, I'll work to make sure that all money going to school districts funnels through this fair funding formula and that all Pennsylvanian students have a fair and equal opportunity for education.
Peter, we'll have to stop you there. Les, we'll start with you.
I believe the funding within the school districts come within the operation of charter and cyber schools. The charter and cyber schools are sucking the money right from our school districts without any accountability. I watch the commercials, free tuition for cyber, K through 12. It's not free. It comes from our school districts. The funding, if those laws were reformed on the charter and as well cyber, I do believe that cyber school, online schooling can do well for the children. However, the laws need to be changed. The laws need to be changed on charter as well as cyber. And I feel the funding would increase if those two processes of education were reformed. As well, there's the situation of the areas of property taxes. I, myself, would love to be able to go to work in Harrisburg and try to abolish the situation of property tax versus trying to find a formula with a fund that would be able to fund our educational process without the use of property tax. I know that other people have tried, but I believe I could try and try harder. That's what
All right, thank you. Brad?
With education, something that people need to keep in mind, in Pennsylvania, the average school district spends about $16,000 a year per student. The national average is about $13,000. So we're spending a lot more already in Pennsylvania. As far as a fair funding formula, we actually passed a fair funding formula. The language was actually amended onto a bill that I had passed. The original bill made it easier for colleges to do online classes more efficiently, and the language for the fair funding formula was actually amended onto my bill. But it is a good formula. The new fair funding formula takes into account poverty and the ability to tax based on property values, the number of students that don't speak English, and factors like that. And the school district basically gets extra money for each student that's in those categories. Now, as far as running all school funding through that formula, that's not going to happen. It's new increases in funding. Every year we increase education funding. So every year, school districts basically get what they got the year before, then new funding goes through that new formula. As far as charter cybers and regular charter schools, it's important to note that the way the law is, say a school district spends $16,000 per student. If a student decides to go to a cyber charter or a charter, the school district has to send $12,000 to the charter school, but the school district keeps the other $4,000 even though they no longer have that student. So it's not really as bad as some people think. As far as the Erie School District, they create a lot of their own problems. They gave 4% pay raises 4 years in a row in the last union contract. They only make their employees pay $60 a month for health insurance, and they even give retiree health insurance for $60 a month at any age after 20 years of service.
Brad, thank you. Our next question, Dan Walk will pose, and we'll start with Les.
Some people are saying music, art, or even sports should be eliminated from schools because they are unnecessary and expensive. The counter-argument is exposing students to art, music, and sports can motivate students who may not respond well to in the classroom. Do you see sufficient value in retaining art, music, sports, or other extracurricular activities?
Yes, I do, because I'm an art educator myself. I teach the culinary arts and restaurant management class at the Crawford County Career and Technical Center. And that is an art. That is an art of the situation of preparing an appearance of food. High school football, high school music, band. I have multiple children within my classroom that are a part of band. If band was not there, I believe that there would be other things that they would get themselves involved with not too good of outcomes. The football, sports as well. I have multiple children that play sports for all the school districts. And I do believe that football, music, and the arts need to be a part of the system in order to maintain a well-rounded education.
All right, thank you. Les, Brad, we're up to you.
I think probably 100% of the population agrees that we should have things like music and art and sports and, National Honor Society and all the different extracurricular activities like that. Those are a very important component of the education process, and I think everybody supports having those things. I know my kids have been involved in those things currently and in the past, and I think that it does enhance the educational experience. If you think about some of these classes kids take, if you're taking a wood shop class, you're learning how to run, drill presses and sanders and saws and everything. A lot of the same skills you need to do that are transferable to working in a lot of our local tool and die shops. It's a fact that kids that are taking music classes, band classes, music is a very logical thing. Those kids tend to do better in math classes and things like that because of what they learn from music. It helps to inspire creativity. I don't think there's anybody that's opposed to having those things in school. Now, what's frustrating is when you hear of school districts like the Erie School District, they're talking about canceling all their sports, canceling band, canceling art. Again, as I mentioned before, most employers don't run around giving 4% pay raises as we crawl out of a recession, but the Erie School District did. Most employers don't only make their employees pay $60 a month for health insurance, but the Erie School District does. Most employers don't give retiree health insurance coverage at any age for $60 a month. Those things I just listed, they cost the Erie School District about $10 million a year. So if the Erie School District ran their school district more like a company, somebody would run a business, they wouldn't have to be talking about closing high schools and canceling sports and things like that.
Brad, thank you. Peter?
Sure.
We're up with you.
Yeah, I think we all agree that increasing the richness within our educational facilities is a good thing for the students, for our community, and for whatever career they move on to in the future. I find it interesting, Brad's position supporting these music and arts. There's high criticism that you can find where he has critiqued individuals who are seeking higher education within the arts to go and call a degree in poetry or English a Walmart degree, a useless degree. This neoliberal idea that education is only there to create an income, to generate wealth, to have a career, I think is a flawed idea of why we go to school. We don't go to school strictly to get a job. We go to school and we engage in the arts so that we have a better understanding of what the human experience is. What are neighbors going through when their grandmother passed away? How we can find the solution to, implementing innovation within a new industry. What are the logical steps in creating these solutions? And we can go back and we can look at what we did in music theory and how we recognize these deviations in notes. And now we can apply that to new integrations in CNC machining and 3D printing and all types of additive manufacturing. These are the ideas of education. You don't go there to get a job. You go there to learn, to be a successful individual in our community. And I think it is imperative that we continue to support the arts, extracurriculars, and sports, not only in elementary, secondary, but also in post-secondary and continued lifelong learning.
Thank you, Peter. Our next question, Dan will pose, and we will start with Brad.
Pennsylvania and the nation face a crisis of abuse of prescription drugs with opioids. What can legislature do to stem the tide of prescription drug abuse?
The drug problem that we have is absolutely terrible, and as most of you probably already know, it's not a problem only in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. It's right here in Crawford County, right here in Erie County, Venango, Warren, this whole corner of the state. The governor addressed a joint session of the legislature a couple weeks ago, and I thought he had some really good ideas that we should look at. I don't think anything he suggested is a magic bullet, but I think it might help a little bit. The governor is suggesting that we pass different pieces of legislation, things like requiring physicians to look at the database every time they write a prescription for opioids, rather than just the first time they write a prescription. Another thing he suggested is when you go to the emergency room, have a law that they can only give you a 7-day supply of opioids rather than a 14-day supply or 21-day supply. He also suggested there should be more continuing education for physicians about the dangers of people becoming addicted to painkillers, and try to find other things to give people that are less addictive. Have more programs in schools to teach kids about the dangers of drug addiction. And I think those ideas like that, contrary to public opinion and perception, probably 90% of the legislation that we vote on in Harrisburg passes by almost unanimous votes, or just a few people vote no. And I really think the drug legislation the governor is suggesting, all that legislation will probably pass by an almost majority vote, or excuse me, almost a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Brad. Peter, we're up to you.
Sure. Yeah, we all know the opioid epidemic in our region is severe and significant. I think some of the best steps to approach that is to engage with the doctors who are prescribing these types of medicines. It's very, I've spoken with a number of physicians. They have a concern with some of their colleagues who you've got this patient who continues to come in, and it becomes very easy to just, placate this individual and to give them this prescription. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. I think we can invest in new technologies that, rather than relying on substance, we can start reworking nervous systems. This is through kind of electronic stimulation that rewires nerve endings and their response around these issues. So we cut the head of the snake off right there. So rather than relying upon these drugs, we've developed new technology to shift the way that we implement healthcare. I think another great way to do this is to invest in support systems for folks coming off of injuries. I was in a situation where I was given huge amounts of painkillers, and without the strong support system of my folks and my friends, and the general will of myself to go out and do something afterwards, I could have slipped down this slope. So to integrate supportive systems through neighbors, through community members, I think is another great way to do it. It's something that we really need to address. I think providing outlets for folks to be productive within the community, working with their neighbors, working in new fields, something that keeps them engaged so they're not just falling onto addiction, so they're not just relying upon drug use as entertainment and activity. I think these are the combinations that we need to really break down this epidemic.
Peter, we're going to have to hold you at that point. Les?
The opioid situation, I've attended a few of the meetings, one at the courthouse, and was told literally there is no cure. There is no cure for it. The only way it's going to be able to happen is that we need to find a way to stabilize it and bring it under control. And the process of stabilizing is going to be with the use of the doctors, laws, government, police, and work with all the governing bodies in order to stabilize the addiction process that's happening. And that's what I want to do. I want to work with those governing bodies in order to bring a stabilizing situation to the addiction. And that's not the only, there's multiple other ones, multiple other addictions as well, but we need to have law enforcement as well as laws that help out the situation. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Les. Dan, I'll let you Go ahead, please.
Pennsylvania now allows medical marijuana with the extraction of oils used to treat patients. Do you favor a further expansion of marijuana laws, including legalization, such as what happened in Washington and Colorado? Why or why not?
And we'd start with Peter.
Sure. I think the opportunity to expand our resources for the medical field is a huge step forward for Pennsylvania. I think the next logical step is addressing the criminal element of marijuana, the expense that taxpayers are burdened by for the fact that some folks are recreationally smoking pot, having small amounts of it, carrying small amounts of it, and then seeing huge repercussions. Decriminalizations happened in not only statewide endeavors, but also in municipalities, and the response from that has been primarily positive. You don't see the type of behavior with opiate-based drugs. Even with alcohol, it doesn't have that addictive quality. So I think if the legislator in the state of Pennsylvania is interested in expanding our liberties and our access to different things that we can decide to use or not to decide to use as an adult, I think the next logical step is to start experimenting with the non-criminalization of marijuana.
Thank you, Peter. Les, we're up to you.
I myself have no problem of the medical situation of marijuana, the use of giving the opportunity for those individuals that use it for that purpose. I feel that there could be, and there is loopholes within the laws that need to be reformed. I think it was passed fast without the process of looking at all the laws that are there. I think there's loopholes that will hold no accountability to the use. I myself, I don't agree with the recreational use. However, I feel that there is able to be used for medical purposes. It's there, it's now lawful, but the laws need to be reformed.
Thank you, Les. Brad?
I disagree with my Democratic opponent that we should legalize marijuana for recreational usage or decriminalize it or
I
whatever.
did not say legalize, I said decriminalize, which is the idea of not throwing people in jail for small amounts.
Is it my turn to answer the questions
Yes.
now? Okay,
It is,
thank
yeah.
you. I don't support the legalization of recreational marijuana. I don't support decriminalization. What I do support is what I voted for. I voted for the medical marijuana law. Again, it's not a magic bullet, but in certain situations, if a physician feels that medical marijuana would be an effective treatment to help a cancer patient deal with their pain or something like that, that should be an option that's available. The law that we passed took forever to pass. It didn't go through quickly. I mean, it took forever to go through. Meetings took place for months and months and months. And what we passed was a very controlled, very regulated system. Growers have to be licensed by the state. The marijuana has to be grown indoors to make it harder for people to steal it and stuff like that. Anybody that dispenses the marijuana, they have to be licensed by the state. We're not going to be Colorado. You can't just walk into a store and say, hey, dude, I want some pot. It's not like that. It's going to be treated just about like regular prescription drugs are treated. And as far as legalizing it for recreational purposes, no. And when you have a law, you need to have law and order in society. If there's a law, it needs to be enforced. If we don't want to enforce a law, we could just repeal the law and have legal pot, but I don't support that.
Brad, thank you. This next question, we'll start with Les. Pennsylvania's had a budgetary / legislative gridlock for quite a while. It's been tough to get budgets through. Politicians don't seem willing to compromise or create solutions. It's very polarized. What qualities do you bring to the office to help Pennsylvania's legislature get kind of back to a working relationship among its members?
I bring 4 years of sitting on the Pencrest School Board, of working with 5 other individuals to pass a budget on time. We are asked, I also work within the school, and before the school districts are able to pass a budget, I must supply my budget to the school. So therefore, it's, we need to be able to compromise. We need to be able to sit across the table from one another. And yes, we are going to argue, and we're going to disagree, but we need to also come together. At the same time, I see that maybe they look at a budget every 6 months to see how what's happening within the area. And at this time, the taxes that were increased on cigarettes and so forth is not working. Somewhere around $700 million short. Therefore, they got 6 more months to make up that $700 million. They're already $70 billion in the hole with Peaser's funds. The situation is we need to come together as a group of people and run the state of Pennsylvania as a business. I think I can sit across the table and come with agreements with those people and compromise to make Pennsylvania grow again.
Thank you, Les. Brad, we're up.
When you look at the state budget process, it's a very, very complicated, difficult process every year. Last year, I was one of the people that was demanding that we hold the line on spending. I was one of the people who insisted that we not do a tax increase. At the time, Pennsylvania had about the 12th highest taxes in the entire United States. Job creation suffers with high rates of taxation. A lot of people running for office, they say they want to create jobs. Government cannot create jobs. What we can do is get out of the way and let companies create jobs. And the only way the government can help companies create jobs is to have lower taxes and fewer regulations. So I always support, like I said before, I have a 100% record voting no on tax increases. Last year, we actually passed a budget that did not raise taxes. The governor vetoed it. We passed another budget. The governor vetoed it. We passed another budget. The governor vetoed it. And then I can't remember if it took 3 or 4 times. I think it was 4 times. Anyways, we finally got a budget put in place. The budget that we passed, like I said, no tax increases. The governor kept insisting on massive spending increases. Now, as far as compromise, what people have to realize, like I said before, we compromise on almost everything we do in Harrisburg. About 90% of the legislation we vote on passes by nearly unanimous votes. But on some issues, like the budget, there does tend to be a lot of disagreement. And when you think of compromise, you think of how large of a tax increase should we have? That's what people are really saying when they say we should compromise in the budget. Well, I say we should hold the line, not make our residents pay higher taxes, not make our businesses pay higher taxes. We need to make Pennsylvania a competitive state so we can have some decent job creation.
Brad, thank you. Peter?
Sure. As far as the elements that I can bring into getting folks working together, to building compromise, and hopefully building the economic wealth of Pennsylvania, I think there's a lot of opportunity where folks on the right and folks on the left can come to the middle and see a common ground. The systems that are in place in Pennsylvania, as far as our tax structure, what we had talked earlier about for educational funding, these are inequitable systems. If you look at how we're collecting taxes in the state of Pennsylvania, to merely say no tax increases is not really, in my opinion, getting the job done. I think we need to address folks who are being pinched, primarily small businesses operating solely in the state of Pennsylvania who don't have the ability to capitalize on large accounting firms or to go through these Delaware loopholes and to funnel their money through these subsidiaries. we can come to the middle, make a more equitable tax structure, alleviate the burden on small businesses, most of the businesses that we have right here, and still allow our budget to grow with rates of inflation when places like Crawford County aren't seeing an income growth. So I think these types of ideas, finding common values, common solutions between both the right and the left, is something that, I'm able to demonstrate in the region just around here, but I think it's also a skill of mine that I can bring to Harrisburg, that we can get new ideas in here. We can generate better solutions than just saying, let's keep it how it is. We're not going to raise taxes, but things are like doing okay.
Thank you, Peter. Our next question Dan will pose, and we'll start with Brett.
Pennsylvania's General Assembly has 253 members, and that includes 50 in the Senate and 203 in the House of Representatives. Pennsylvania is the second largest state legislature in the nation behind New Hampshire and the largest full-time legislature. Wouldn't it make sense as a way to save money in Pennsylvania to cut the size of legislature?
Absolutely. You can see that the three of us have disagreements on things. Imagine having 203 people sitting in the room in the State House chambers trying to come up with consensus on something. We should absolutely cut the size of the legislature. I have voted for that numerous times. I serve on the State Government Committee, as well as the Finance Committee, the Insurance Committee, and the Human Services Committee. Those are all really good committees, by the way. But at the committee level, this has come up several times. I always speak in favor of reducing the size of the legislature. We are way too big. With technology that we have today, every day, I'm on the phone with legislators from the Philadelphia area, the Pittsburgh area, the Allentown area. In about 4.5 hours, I can get from my house to Harrisburg. If you think back to 100 years ago, it was probably a 10 or 12 hour drive in a car or a horse and buggy. It would take days to get to Harrisburg. Well, it's not like that anymore. With the internet, with fax machines, email, there's no reason why we need 203 people. We probably needed 203 people, decades ago, but we don't need that anymore. As far as saving money, it would save a lot of money. Now, I only have one district office that I pay rent for. Most legislators have two. I only get reimbursed for what my actual expenses are in Harrisburg. Most legislators, collect thousands of dollars a year more in per diem payments than what their expenses are. I don't have a state car. Some legislators take a state car. So when you look at other legislators, the excessive amounts of money that they're spending on per diems and office rent and state cars and things like that, it would save millions of dollars by having a smaller legislature, and it would be easier for us to debate issues and reach a consensus on things.
Thank you. Peter?
Sure. I agree. I think our legislature, it is too large, it is clunky, it is inefficient and expensive. I think we can reduce the size of the legislature, but I think we also have to recognize the concern that as a rural space, we may be the folks who are not able to have as much representation. So I think that's something to take into concern and to be quite diligent about once this legislation comes up, to see the geographic area of our representative, the abilities to function within that space. I think there's great opportunity to cut expense of the legislator. They're indexed for inflation. So when inflation goes up, salaries go up. They have a 5-year vested, fully vested pension, a really expensive pension. I think these are things that we can start to address and to bring the level of compensation of the representative more in line with the median wage of Pennsylvania. I think combining offices within an area not only makes it more efficient as far as being able to go to one office if you need to discuss an issue with a senator, or if you need to discuss an issue with a representative, or maybe it's in a similar location as the county building or a city municipal building. I think this idea of sharing resources is a great way to cut expenses. I support the idea that the legislature is reduced in size, that it becomes more nimble, that it becomes more effective, but ultimately we need to make sure that the citizens are able to get a hold of their representative so that their voices are still heard.
Thank you, Peter. Lester?
I as well believe that the amount of people serving as legislators need to be depleted. But I will not, as if I was a legislator, would not vote until I saw the gerrymandering of the area so that, again, the rural area was taken care of. We sat here with 4 representatives in Crawford County and a senator. However, the gerrymandering has put it that way. We have Mr. Whitling in Girard, takes care of Conneautville. We have Mr. Roae, sits in Crawford County, takes care of Springboro. We have Mr. Sonny and Mr. Bizzaro taking care of the area within Edinburgh. Again, I believe that it does need to be depleted, needs to be broken down. However, if I was to be a legislator, I would not allow it to happen without the rural areas being taken care of so that they're able to get to the representative.
Okay. Thank you very much. One thing that Pennsylvania and other states are facing is problems with its pension system. A recent report that pension systems that are run across the country were underfunded by $1.2 trillion, that's with a T, last year, and that could even get worse in the years ahead. Moody's Investor Services released a report that it says it expects that gap to get to $1.7 trillion once a new round of state audits come out by the various states. Now, we've got lower than expected returns, growing numbers of retirees on the state pension system, longer lifespans. All this stuff is contributing to that growing gap. The question is, how would you propose to solve the state's pension shortfall? And with this question, we will start with Peter.
Sure. The situation we're in with the pension is an issue that's really been brewing for over a decade. If you look back into the 90s, Pennsylvania pensions were about 100% funded. We were doing the obligation of the people to fund pensions. The states were putting in money, employees were putting in money, the economy was doing well, and things were growing. Around Tom Ridge, the amount that states are putting into the pension system starts to slip. 9/11 happens, the economy drops, and we start losing all of this money. We start slipping down this slope, and we were just starting to get back to the levels of the funding that we did. So we're starting way behind. There's no quick solution to this problem that's been brewing for a decade. Kind of what Keith talked about, folks are living longer. We've got fewer contributors and more beneficiaries. This is creating an imbalance of money going in compared to money coming out. Primarily, though, one of the biggest expenses is healthcare. The rate of healthcare in the state of Pennsylvania across the country is exploding. If you look at the budget from 2006 and look at the budget in 2016, we're spending 56% more on healthcare expense than we did in the past. And that's not because we have 56% more elderly folks in this area. The thing is, if we don't get a control on the expense of healthcare, this pension system is never going to cooperate. We're never going to have the resources to support our elderly if insurance companies are able to own hospitals, they're able to own doctor's offices, they're able to have control over the expense and the cost of pharmacies. We're completely at the mercy of these healthcare expenses. I think the only solution is to use our leverage as a state to decrease healthcare expenses, and then to also diligently and appropriately fund our pension systems. Pensions are not wealth generators. Pensions are poverty. It's an insurance against poverty, and I think that's how we should look at it.
Thank you, Peter. Les, you?
In 2001, I was handed a piece of paper from the government to exchange my pension plan from 1.5 or 1.75, I can't remember, it was 20 years ago, to a 2.0 or 2.5. The unions did not do this. The government did. Then they put it into 9/11 comes into effect because they're feeling that the stock market can take care of it. It did not. At the same time, they are offering to put a pension together with a 401k and with the opportunity of having Social Security, you shouldn't have a problem. Well, I don't count on Social Security in 10 years being here. So therefore, we do have a problem because 401ks are going to make banks richer, not make people, okay? I believe that the 1.5 or the 1.75 that was in effect in 2000, prior to 2001 could be brought back, reformed, to give the sectors an opportunity. But everybody must sacrifice. I'm talking the legislators, the public sector, the police, everybody. Everybody needs to sacrifice on this situation in order to bring it back. It's going to be a long time. I plan on being here hopefully 20 years from now, okay? And to pay what I have coming to me and to Mr. Roae himself, that problem is going to be around for a long time. And we need to come up with a fund in order to fund it.
Thank you. Brad, over to you.
I actually voted several times, and at one point, we actually passed legislation in the House and Senate to reform the pension system. Unfortunately, Governor Wolf vetoed it. What the legislation would have done, it would have kept all current employees in the defined benefit pension plan. It would have kept all retirees in the defined benefit pension plan, and it would have moved all legislators to a new retirement plan that's comparable to a 401k plan. But Governor Wolf vetoed that. Almost all companies in our local area no longer offer a defined benefit pension plan to employees. Virtually all companies have switched to a 401k plan. The nonprofits have 403b plans. Nobody's doing a defined benefit pension plan anymore. As far as what happened to the pension plan, back in 2001, the pension plan was funded, the two main pension plans, CSRS and PSRS, they were funded at about 115 or 120%. That means there was, $120 for every $100 of owed pension benefits that are projected. And what happened is laws were passed before I was in the legislature. They increased the pension benefit. Most employees in schools in the state had a 2% multiplier. That means you get 2% for every year of service. So after a 35-year career, your pension would be, 75% of what you used to make. Well, now it's 70%, 87.5%. Now, an example of a problem with the pension system, again, it's based on years of service times your salary. If somebody's a public school teacher for 30 years around here, their pension's going to be about $45,000 a year. If they get a different job, such as being in the legislature, and they have 4 years of the higher salary the legislators make, their pension would be about $60,000 a year. So even if we maintain the defined benefit pension plan,
Brad, I'm sorry,
Okay.
we're going to have
Okay.
to cut you off at that point. We were talking about pensions, school, educators. One area there's some disparity, and it kind of ties in with the national issue of income inequality. We've got some educators who are working their post-secondary. They have to satisfy the same credentials, educational career goals, objectives as public school educators. And in addition, there's adult educators who also have to serve as case managers who connect with adults. We're talking about like the READ program and so forth. And when you look at that, here in Pennsylvania, first-year teachers making about $42,000 a year, starting out on average. Crawford Central first-year teachers making about low 30s. But if in Crawford County, you've got adult educators working with GED programs, they're only making about $25,000 a year. And they work about 35 hours a week, and they're not getting any benefits. What could be done in a situation like this, and other cases where there's some income inequality for the same type of work? What can be done to bring these incomes in line, these rates in line, do you think, as a legislator? And Les, we'll start with you.
Equal pay is going to be very, very tough. Equal pay comes with then a demand, such as anything else. If you're supply and demand, you have as well supply and demand for your different careers. I myself not only understand the situation of a person doing a job within, say, reading or the ARC, but do they hold the degree that an educator has, or has to continue doing the same? Act 48 hours that are given to the instructors and teachers in order to keep their certifications, that once was 99 years, now isn't. Every 5 years, you must continue your education throughout and come up with a total of different credits in order to keep your certification. The people that are in the process of the ARC or the reading program, if they hold no certifications in education, then the price of the supply and demand is the situation on that. And I feel degrees hold a higher representation of higher skill, higher pay than what the uncertified people do.
Thank you. Brad?
The national average starting salary for a new teacher, according to the National Education Association, that's the teachers union, according to their own survey, it's around $37,000 a year. In Pennsylvania, the average starting salary is about $42,000. Locally here at Crawford Central, it's about $47,000 a year. So the numbers are rather quite high in this area compared to the state average and the national average. When it comes to education, there is a lot of disparity. If you look at a first-year kindergarten teacher that works for a school district, it's about $47,000 a year. That same person working for a Head Start program or a preschool program or a pre-K counts program or something like that, they're making $25,000. So there is a lot of disparity there. And again, I talked about it earlier, but when you look at education in Pennsylvania, we spend about $16,000 a year per student. That's your property taxes, that's your state income taxes, your state sales tax. We spend about $16,000 a year per person. The national average is about $13,000 a year. A lot of that is driven by the higher salaries. Pennsylvania has about the 10th highest teacher salaries in the country, and it's good to pay a good salary, good benefits to attract good talent, but that kind of has to be balanced. In an area like ours, where the median household income is only about $43,000 a year, it's kind of hard to do that. As far as the whole picture of income inequality, I've always talked to people that are going to college, and I let them know that there's a difference between a college major and a hobby. I think my Democratic opponent, his college major was theater or cinema or something like that. That's probably not going to be as bountiful as if somebody studies engineering or nursing or accounting or something like that, where there's actually a job demand.
Brad, okay, thank you. Peter? Excuse me, please. Peter?
Sure. So for the idea of job or pay inequality, if we're going to pay somebody to do the job, I think we should pay them what the job is worth to us. If we're paying somebody a certain amount to do it for a student, I don't understand why there would be a discrepancy to serve these same functions as an adult. What I seem to be hearing a lot from the incumbent is this idea that Pennsylvania is so out of bounds with what we pay teachers. This idea that we're above the average. we pay more than average. I don't think trying to be average is a good model for education. I don't think trying to come to the middle of the road is how we're going to create a successful population. Some quick numbers. Pennsylvania is 8th in enrollment, but we're 5th in graduation. Pennsylvania is 6th in daily attendance. So we're graduating more students and they're coming to school more often. And I kind of have a feeling it's because we've got better teachers and we're willing to pay teachers to do that job more, and they're more successful at it. I think we can take that same model and look at adult education and say, what's going to create a more successful environment? Is it if we, pay our teachers $20,000 and they don't have to have the same credentials and they don't have to go through the same training and they don't have the same rewards as someone who makes more? Are they going to put in that same job? Are they going to put in the same work to that job? Is that a benefit to the community? And also this idea that if we're going to be balancing budgets off of, income tax and sales tax, what people make and what people buy, racing to the bottom and making sure everybody has a lower income is not going to solve these problems.
Peter, thank you. Our next question, Dan will pose, and we'll start with Brad.
There are infrastructure problems in Pennsylvania, whether it be roads, bridges, or utilities like water and sewer lines. What are the top 3 projects you would like to be completed in 6th district, and how will you push for them to get done?
I probably have a different point of view on different projects like that. A lot of legislators, they go out there and they try to advocate for these big projects where, they build stuff that's not there now. I think we need to take care of what we already have. When you look at our roads, when you look at our bridges, we have a lot of highways that need a little bit of tender loving care. We have a lot of bridges that need to be fixed. I think the priority should be taking care of what we already have. If you have a house and the roof is leaking and the windows leak and the plumbing system is outdated, you don't build an addition on your house. You take care of what you have, you get all that up in order, then you can start looking at, doing other things. But I think we absolutely have to take care of what we already have. Now, a lot of road work and bridge work is being done by the gasoline tax increase. I did vote against that. We now have the highest gasoline tax in the country. That's one of the things that hurts our economy, as well as having the second highest corporate net income tax in the country. Overall, we're about the 15th highest tax state in the country. So we have to be careful with balancing taxing businesses away from Pennsylvania to raise money to build infrastructure for companies that are no longer there. One thing that would help a lot, if we could get prevailing wage laws passed, I support that. Prevailing wage laws add anywhere from 15% to 30% to the cost of every public construction project. The new courthouse building being built, it would be about $4 or $5 million cheaper if we didn't have prevailing wage laws. Our tax money would go a lot further without prevailing wage laws. But the thing I want to leave you with is we have to take care of what we already have.
Brad, thank you. Peter, you're next.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
What a great defensive position. Let's maintain what we have. Let's look at a way to not invest in what we need and not in how we can actually grow. This is exactly what I'm talking about. If we want to take an offensive position, if we want to move forward, there are certain things that we need to do to become competitive in the market. We need to invest in infrastructure, and it's not just roads and bridges, it's broadband, it's internet, it's making sure that we have properties and educational and training institutions that are retooling workers to be in innovative industries. These are the types of infrastructure that we need to build upon to make ourselves competitive. Yeah, we've got a really high corporate income tax here. 80% of corporations in Pennsylvania are paying $1,000 or less in it. Why is that? What does that mean? That means we've got 20% of businesses, predominantly small Pennsylvania-owned businesses, that are paying that entire tax burden. Let's alleviate that tax. Let's drop that corporate tax number down take the burden off of our small businesses that we have around here, and let's fold in the larger corporations that are diverting that money through the loopholes, through their elaborate accounting schemes, so that equitability in Pennsylvania is a real thing, so that we can capitalize on folks who are using our infrastructure, who are making money, so that we all can increase our wealth. Again, this idea of prevailing wage and like right to work and jobs become cheaper because pay goes down. If we want to make money off of income tax, and that's predominantly what Pennsylvania does, income tax and sales tax is how we make money in Pennsylvania for our revenue. We can't just keep slashing salaries. We can't keep slashing pay. We need to pay people. They've got better purchasing power. They're buying more stuff. They're buying property. This is how you build an economy.
Peter,
you don't stay the course.
We're going to have to stop you at that point. Les?
The taxes and the regulations need to cease. The taxes and the regulations need to come off the small business as well as corporate offers. If we want to see a growth, we need to become technology and manufacturing friendly in the state of Pennsylvania, as well in northwestern Pennsylvania. We need to bring those opportunities here for better pays, for better pay wages. At the same time, the infrastructure that we have will be brought back to existence. The use of the railroads, the use of the highways, the use of the water. We will have that if the taxes and the regulations are taken away from the corporate and the small businesses in order for them to grow. We need to give those people maybe some incentives so that we're able to themselves grow what we have here in order to bring other people and other businesses to us. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our home before the other ones come. And once this home is built, other people will come. Build it and they will come.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to move toward our closing statements, and we will start with Mr. Roae. Brad, you'll have up to 2 minutes for your closing statement, and we'll come right back down the line, and Peter will be the last one to go, but he won't have the last word. I will. So, Brad, we'll start with you.
I would just like to remind everybody that the Pennsylvania budget is automatically indexed to inflation if we did it right. Our taxes are percentage-based taxes. The sales tax is, 6%, personal income tax 3.07%, corporate net income tax 9.99%. So the whole idea that you can't always say to no tax increases, you have to, that's nonsense. If we grew spending at the same rate the economy grows, you would never even hear about a budget problem. The problem is when people want to spend more money than we have. I will maintain my 100% record of voting no against tax increases. My Democratic opponent said Pennsylvania, how they make money. Folks, Pennsylvania doesn't make money. Pennsylvania takes money, and they take it from you in the form of taxation. The government has no money unless they take it from you. And when I'm in that position, I'm going to make sure that we take as little money as possible from you and let you keep your own money. I would also like to encourage everybody to study the issues. I am endorsed by groups like the National Rifle Association, Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, the anti-tax increase groups. People like that support my campaign. My Democratic opponent, he has favorable ratings by groups like Planned Parenthood, groups like Ceasefire PA, that's a gun control group. There is major differences between the two names that are on the ballot. So I would encourage people to study the issues and decide who you want to vote for. Again, with my experience that I have, my business degree, my insurance experience, my experience with the volunteer fire department, my legislative experience, I think I'm well suited to serve another term in the PA House, and I would appreciate your support on Election Day.
Brad, thank you very much. Lester, we'll start with we'll continue with you, and again, you have up to 2 minutes for your closing statement.
I come to you this evening as a write-in. My name will not be seen. That means it's going to be a harder task. As I started 22 months ago, as I said before in my opening, that I went to people and I haven't stopped. I believe in term limits. I'm going to make my own term limits. If elected or when elected in 2016, I will ask to serve this 2 years and 2 more years. And after that, my name will not be seen. I'm not in it for a retirement situation. I'm not in it for a career. I'm in it to help the people, for the opportunity to help you. I want to see the opportunity to change and at the same time be able to make change and work with the next person that goes in after I. But I ask that you not vote straight party on election day. You take the opportunity and look under Lester, or vote LesterLenhart.com. You'll find my stance. You'll find me as an individual. I'm a Shriner of 30 years, an Elk member of 30 years, worked with multiple organizations of charitable organizations throughout my career. Been on the part of the school board for Pencrest School District. I've done my grassroots. I'm looking for the people to give me the opportunity. At the same time, I will use not a state car, but my own car. I'm not endorsed by the NRA, but I am an NRA member. So the constitutional situation will be taken care of. As well as I was born and I was given a chance. Therefore, I am pro-life, and I will work for pro-life. But I need you folks to give me the opportunity to do it, to give me the chance. If not, you're my accountability. At the end of the 2 years, vote me out. Thank you.
And Peter,
Yeah.
again, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Brad. Pennsylvania doesn't make money, they generate revenue. That is a good point of clarification. And I don't know how I have favorability without voting on legislation, but good tactic as well. The idea of staying the course and continuing down this road that we're on. If you're happy with having a net loss for our average income in Crawford County, then let's keep going down that route. If you want to see new ideas and creativity and linking of industry, whether it's education and healthcare or manufacturing and agriculture, and you want to see all of these things come to fruition in Crawford County in Northwest Pennsylvania, then I suggest you give me a shot. I'm working with other folks in the area. I'm talking to all these different industries, and we're coming up with ideas in how to increase the economic activity right here. We've got a national additive manufacturing hub in Youngstown. Like Lester's been saying, we've got great infrastructure, whether it's 79 and 80, 90, Port Erie. If you want to take these innovators and these entrepreneurs that are creating incredible things in Youngstown, we can bring them to Northwest Pennsylvania. We can have them set up shop. They can bring jobs here, and we can enjoy the success that they bring with them. We'll support them as neighbors, we'll support them as community members, and that's one industry. You can go to my website, peterzimmer.us. You can contact me. I'm more than happy to sit down, have conversations. We've got a number of public forums coming up and meet and greets as well. So come check it out, come talk, let's have a real discussion. As much information as can come out in these types of Q&As. I think getting together and having a real, eye-to-eye conversation is the way to go. So again, on November 8th, I ask for your support, and let's move forward.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, thank you. We appreciate the audience being here tonight. We appreciate the folks watching on Armstrong as well as those listening on Cool 101.7. Before we close, one quick reminder. We are live, so if you see this on tape, it'll already be passed, but tomorrow is the last day to register to vote for the November 8th election. And if you have not done so or you need to change your registration, you need to do that. We hope everyone will take the advantage of voting on November 8th and voting for the candidates of their choice. We'd like to thank Brad, Peter, and Lester for appearing tonight and for participating here. We'd also, again, want to thank the audience here and listening and watching. and for joining us. Armstrong is going to repeat this on Thursday. It'll be on Armstrong Channel 23 and Channel 100 on Thursday at approximately 4:15 in the afternoon. There'll also probably be a number of night owl sessions and other repeats leading up to the election day, so we hope you get a chance to watch it if you didn't catch everything. Also, we'll have it in tomorrow's edition. Jane Smith is here covering it for the Meadville Tribune. On behalf of Dan Walk and the Meadville Tribune, I'm Keith Gushard, and have a good evening.